The farmer was desperate to save his bull, and the girl said, "Can I help?" No one foresaw the outcome. Mitchell Harper's hands were shaking as he knelt beside Apollo, and it wasn't from the cold morning air that swept across his property in the Gippsland region of Victoria. It was fear. Pure, gut-wrenching fear that after 32 years of farming, after building his herd from nothing, after surviving droughts and floods and market crashes, he was about to lose the one animal that held it all together. Apollo was dying. The massive white Charolais bull, all 900 kilograms of him, lay on his side in the barn, his breathing shallow and labored, his eyes half closed. The vet had been and gone 3 hours ago, leaving behind a grim diagnosis and a bottle of antibiotics that Mitchell knew in his heart wouldn't be enough. "Bloat," the vet had said, shaking his head. "Severe gastric tympany. His rumens completely distended. I've done what I can, but Mitchell, you need to prepare yourself. Bulls this size, once they go down like this, they rarely get back up." Mitchell had nodded, paid the bill, and then sat down beside Apollo and refused to move. That had been at 4 in the morning. Now it was past 7, and the sun was climbing over the paddocks, painting everything in shades of gold that seemed cruelly beautiful given the circumstances. Apollo wasn't just a bull. He was the foundation sire of Mitchell's breeding program, the animal that had produced championship offspring for 5 consecutive years. The reason Mitchell's small operation had survived when larger farms around him had gone under. Apollo's genetics were worth a fortune, but more than that, the bull had been Mitchell's companion through the loneliest years of his life, after his wife Sarah had passed from cancer, after his son had moved to Melbourne and stopped calling. Mitchell ran his hand along Apollo's massive neck, feeling the heat of the fever burning through the animal's body. "Come on, mate," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Don't you dare give up on me. Not now. Not like this." Apollo's eye opened slightly, focusing on Mitchell with what seemed like recognition, with what Mitchell desperately wanted to believe was understanding. Then the eye closed again, and the bull's breathing became even more labored. Mitchell was so focused on Apollo that he didn't hear the sound of footsteps approaching the barn, didn't notice the small figure standing in the doorway until a voice, young and clear, cut through his despair. "Can I help?" Mitchell looked up, his vision blurred with tears. He hadn't realized he was crying, and saw her, a girl, maybe 10 or 11 years old, with long brown hair pulled back in a plait, wearing a simple dress and gumboots that were 3 sizes too large. She was looking at Apollo with an intensity that seemed far too mature for her age. "Who are you?" Mitchell asked, his voice rougher than he intended. "How did you get here?" "I'm Lily," the girl said simply. "We moved to the property next door last week. I saw you from my window. You've been here for hours." Mitchell wanted to tell her to leave, that this wasn't something a child should see, that he didn't need an audience for his grief. But something in the girl's expression stopped him. There was no fear in her eyes, no curiosity or morbid fascination, just calm, focused concern. "He's very sick," Mitchell said finally. "The vet's done all he can. I'm just staying with him." Lily walked closer, moving with a confidence that surprised Mitchell. She approached Apollo without hesitation, kneeling down on the other side of the bull's massive body. She placed her small hand on his flank, just above where his stomach was grotesquely distended. "He's got too much gas in his belly," she said. "It's pressing on his lungs. That's why he can't breathe properly." Mitchell stared at her. "How do you know that?" "My mum's a large animal vet. Was a large animal vet. Before she died, she used to take me on calls sometimes. I've seen this before." The matter-of-fact way she said it, the lack of self-pity in her voice when mentioning her mother's death, hit Mitchell harder than anything else could have. This girl understood loss, understood it in the way only people who'd lived through it could. "The vet already tried to decompress him," Mitchell said. "Put a tube down his throat. It didn't work. The gas is trapped." Lily was quiet for a moment, her hand still resting on Apollo's flank. Mitchell could see her thinking, processing, her young face creased with concentration. "Did he try a trocar?" she asked finally. Mitchell felt his stomach drop. A trocar. The emergency procedure where you punctured the rumen directly through the abdominal wall to release the gas. The vet had mentioned it, had said it was too risky, that with a bull this valuable and in this weakened state, the procedure could cause fatal complications, infection, hemorrhage, damage to internal organs. "It's too dangerous," Mitchell said. "Could kill him." "He's dying anyway," Lily said, and the brutal honesty of it made Mitchell flinch. "Isn't he?" Mitchell looked at Apollo, at the barely perceptible rise and fall of his massive ribcage, at the blue tinge developing around his gums. The girl was right. Apollo was dying. The question wasn't whether to risk killing him with a dangerous procedure. The question was whether to let him die slowly or give him a fighting chance, no matter how small. "I don't have the equipment," Mitchell said. "The vet took everything with him." "My mum's kit is still in our garage," Lily said. "Dad couldn't bring himself to throw it away. It has a trocar. I know where it is." Mitchell should have said no. Should have told this child to go home, that this wasn't her responsibility, that he couldn't possibly ask her to be involved in something that could go horribly wrong. But he looked at Apollo, at his dying bull, and he looked at this girl who'd lost her mother and was still somehow standing here, calm and focused and offering help, and he found himself nodding. "Get it," he said, quickly. Lily was gone in an instant, running across the paddocks toward the neighboring property with the speed and determination of someone on a mission. Mitchell watched her go, then turned back to Apollo. "You've got to hold on, mate," he whispered. "Just a little bit longer. We're going to try something. It might work. It might not. But we're going to try." Apollo's eye opened again, and this time Mitchell was certain he saw understanding there. The bull was a fighter. Always had been. If anyone could survive what was coming, it would be Apollo. Lily was back in less than 10 minutes, carrying a black medical bag that looked almost as big as she was. She set it down beside Mitchell and opened it with practiced hands, pulling out instruments and laying them on a clean towel with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. "I've seen Mum do this 3 times, Lily said as she worked. "Twice on cows, once on a bull. All 3 survived." "Your mum must have been a hell of a vet," Mitchell said quietly. "She was the best," Lily said, and there was no boastfulness in it, just simple pride. "That's why I have to help, because she would have helped, because that's what she taught me." She pulled out the trocar, a long metal instrument with a sharp point and a tube attached. Mitchell felt his mouth go dry looking at it. This was really happening. He was about to let a 10-year-old girl guide him through an emergency surgical procedure on his most valuable animal, based on memories of watching her mother work. It was insane. But Apollo was dying, and insanity was better than hopelessness. "Tell me what to do," Mitchell said. Lily's small hands moved with surprising confidence as she arranged the instruments. Mitchell watched, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears, as this child laid out the trocar, antiseptic, gauze, and a collection of other medical supplies, with the precision of someone who'd done it 100 times. "First, we need to find the right spot," Lily said, her voice taking on a clinical tone that reminded Mitchell eerily of how a doctor might sound. "Mum always said the rumen sits on the left side. We need to find the highest point of the swelling between the last rib and the hip bone." She moved her hands across Apollo's distended abdomen, feeling carefully. Mitchell could see the bull's skin stretched tight as a drum, the pressure building inside threatening to rupture organs and blood vessels. Apollo's breathing had become even more shallow, coming in desperate little gasps. "Here," Lily said, marking a spot with her finger. "This is where we need to go in." Mitchell's hands were still shaking as he cleaned the area with antiseptic. The smell of it cut through the barn's familiar scents of hay and livestock, making everything feel suddenly clinical and terrifying. You need to make a small cut in the skin first, Lily instructed. Just big enough for the trocar to go through. Mum used a scalpel for that. Mitchell picked up the scalpel, feeling its weight in his hand. 32 years of farming, and he'd never felt more out of his depth. He looked at Lily, at this young girl who'd lost her mother and was now trying to save his bull with nothing but memories and courage. What if I hurt him? What if this makes it worse? He's already dying, Mr. Harper, Lily said, and the calm certainty in her voice steadied him. This gives him a chance. That's all we can do. Give him a chance. Mitchell took a deep breath and made the incision. It was small, precise, and Apollo barely reacted. The bull was too weak now, too far gone to feel much of anything. Good, Lily said. Now the trocar. You need to push it through quickly and firmly. Once you feel it puncture through into the rumen, there'll be gas. A lot of gas. Don't panic. That's what we want. Mitchell positioned the trocar, feeling the sharp point against Apollo's skin. His hands had stopped shaking now. Something about Lily's presence, her confidence, had given him the steadiness he needed. Do it, Lily said quietly. Mitchell pushed. There was resistance, then a pop as the trocar penetrated through the abdominal wall and into the gas-filled rumen. Immediately, a foul-smelling gas began hissing out through the tube, the pressure releasing in a rush that made both Mitchell and Lily lean back. The smell was horrendous, a mixture of fermented grass and decay that made Mitchell's eyes water, but he didn't care about the smell. He was watching Apollo. The bull's eye opened wider. His breathing, which had been coming in desperate little gasps, suddenly became deeper, longer. His ribcage expanded properly for the first time in hours. It's working, Mitchell breathed. Oh my God, it's working. Keep the trocar in place, Lily said, her voice still calm but with an edge of excitement now. We need to let all the gas out. If we take it out too soon, the pressure could build up again. They stayed there, kneeling beside Apollo, holding the trocar in place as the gas continued to escape. Minutes passed, feeling like hours. The hissing gradually diminished, becoming softer, then finally stopping altogether. Okay, Lily said. Now we can take it out. Slowly, Mitchell withdrew the trocar, and Lily immediately pressed gauze over the wound, holding pressure to stop any bleeding. Apollo's breathing was still labored, but it was so much better than before. The blue tinge around his gums was fading, replaced by a healthier pink. We need to watch for infection, Lily said, and keep him comfortable. But Mr. Harper, I think he's going to make it. Mitchell couldn't speak. He sat back on his heels looking at Apollo, at this massive bull who minutes ago had been dying and was now breathing almost normally. Then he looked at Lily, at this extraordinary girl who'd saved his bull with knowledge inherited from her dead mother and courage that most adults would never possess. Thank you, he managed finally, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me, Lily said, carefully packing away the medical instruments. Mum would have done the same thing. This is what she taught me, that every life matters, that you never give up, even when things look impossible. Over the next few hours, Mitchell and Lily stayed with Apollo, monitoring his recovery. The bull's strength gradually returned. He lifted his head, then managed to roll onto his chest, then finally, with Mitchell and Lily's encouragement and assistance, stood up on shaky legs. It was the most beautiful thing Mitchell had ever seen. This massive, magnificent animal, standing again, breathing again, alive when he should have been dead. He needs water, Lily said. Small amounts first. His system's been through trauma. Mitchell brought fresh water in a bucket, and Apollo drank carefully, his movement still weak but gaining strength with each passing minute. By late afternoon, the bull was eating small amounts of hay, and Mitchell knew he was going to survive. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the barn, a man appeared in the doorway. He was in his early 40s, with the same brown hair as Lily, though his was graying at the temples. His face showed signs of grief, worn like a permanent fixture. "Lily," he called, worry evident in his voice. "Where have you been? I've been looking everywhere." "Dad," Lily said, jumping up, "I'm sorry, I was helping Mr. Harper save Apollo." The man looked at Mitchell, then at the bull, then back at his daughter. Confusion and concern warred on his face. Helping how? Mitchell stood, his knees protesting after so many hours kneeling on the hard barn floor. "Your daughter saved my bull's life," he said simply. "She performed an emergency procedure that my vet said was too risky. She remembered watching your wife work, and she knew what to do. Without her, Apollo would be dead." Lily's father stared at his daughter, and Mitchell saw a complex mix of emotions cross his face. Pride, fear, grief, love. "Sarah's medical bag," he said quietly. "You went into the garage." "I had to, Dad. The bull needed help, and I knew where Mum kept everything. I knew what to do." Her father was silent for a long moment, and Mitchell could see the internal struggle playing out, the grief of a man who'd lost his wife, the fear of a father watching his daughter engage with that loss in such a direct way, but also the pride of a parent seeing their child embody the best qualities of the person they'd both loved. "Your mother would be very proud of you," he said finally, his voice breaking slightly. "But Lily, you can't just run off like that. I was worried sick." "I'm sorry, Dad." Mitchell stepped forward, feeling the need to intervene. "It's my fault. I should have sent word. But honestly, I was so focused on Apollo, and your daughter was so calm and competent, I wasn't thinking clearly." Lily's father extended his hand. "Tom Richards. We moved here from Sydney 2 weeks ago. Mitchell Harper. And I owe your daughter more than I can ever repay." Tom looked at Apollo, at the massive bull standing peacefully in his stall, at the medical supplies still laid out on the towel, at the evidence of what had happened here. "Sarah was the best large animal vet in Sydney," he said quietly. "She loved her work, loved teaching Lily about animals. After she died 6 months ago, I thought moving out here, away from the city, might help us both heal. I never imagined Lily would use what she learned so soon." "She's remarkable," Mitchell said. "You should be very proud." "I am," Tom said, looking at his daughter with eyes that were bright with tears. "I really am." As Tom and Lily prepared to leave, Lily turned back one more time to look at Apollo. "Will you let me know how he's doing?" she asked. "I want to make sure he's okay." "You can come visit any time you want," Mitchell said. "In fact, I'd appreciate it if you did. I think Apollo would too." That night, after Tom and Lily had gone home, Mitchell sat in his kitchen with a cup of tea, staring at nothing. The house felt less empty than it usually did. Something had shifted in the universe today. Some small miracle had occurred that he didn't fully understand, but was profoundly grateful for. A girl had lost her mother. A man had almost lost his bull. And somehow, in the intersection of those two griefs, something beautiful had happened. Life had been saved. Connection had been made. Hope had flickered back to life. Lily came back the next morning, arriving just as Mitchell was finishing the early feed. She was wearing the same oversized gumboots, carrying a small notebook that she explained had been her mother's. Inside were detailed notes about animal care, sketches of anatomy, treatment protocols written in neat handwriting that Mitchell imagined must have belonged to Sarah Richards. "Mum always said the most important part wasn't the emergency treatment," Lily said as she carefully examined Apollo. "It's the follow-up care, making sure infection doesn't set in, making sure the animal's digestive system recovers properly." Mitchell watched as she moved around the bull with the same confidence she'd shown the day before. Apollo seemed to recognize her, his massive head turning to follow her movements, his eyes calm and trusting. "His temperature's down," Lily announced after checking the thermometer, "and the wound site looks clean, but we need to watch him carefully for the next week. Peritonitis is the biggest risk now." "Peritonitis?" Infection in the abdominal cavity, it's what kills most animals after this kind of procedure. We need to keep him on antibiotics, monitor his temperature twice a day, and watch for any signs of pain or discomfort. Mitchell found himself nodding, taking notes as this 11-year-old girl rattled off medical instructions with the authority of someone 3 times her age. It was extraordinary and heartbreaking, because he understood what he was witnessing. This was how Lily was processing her grief, by being her mother, by carrying on Sarah's work. Over the following weeks, Lily became a constant presence on Mitchell's farm. She arrived every morning before school and came back in the afternoon, always heading straight to Apollo's stall. She monitored his recovery with meticulous attention, noting every change in his behavior, his appetite, his vital signs. But something else was happening too, something Mitchell hadn't anticipated. Lily was starting to smile again. Tom mentioned it one evening when he came to collect her, finding Mitchell and Lily sitting together in the barn, Lily reading aloud from one of her mother's veterinary textbooks, while Apollo rested his huge head in Mitchell's lap. "She hasn't smiled like that since Sarah died," Tom said quietly, standing in the doorway, not wanting to interrupt the moment. Not really smiled, not with her eyes. Mitchell looked at Lily, at the genuine joy on her face as she explained something about bovine digestive systems, and felt his throat tighten. "She's teaching me as much as she's helping Apollo," he said. "Maybe more." "Sarah would have loved this," Tom said. "Loved seeing Lily use what she taught her, loved knowing that knowledge was making a difference." As Apollo's recovery progressed, word spread through the local farming community about what had happened. Mitchell found himself fielding calls from curious neighbors, from other farmers who'd heard the story and wanted to know more. The local newspaper sent a reporter, a young woman who arrived with a camera and a notebook full of questions. Mitchell was reluctant to talk to her at first. This felt private, sacred somehow. But Lily's enthusiasm was infectious. "People should know," she said. "They should know that you don't have to be a vet to help animals, that sometimes just caring enough to try can make all the difference." The article that appeared the following week was titled, "Young Girl Saves Prize Bull Using Mother's Medical Knowledge." It included a photo of Lily and Mitchell standing on either side of Apollo, the bull looking magnificent and healthy. No sign of how close he'd come to death. The response was overwhelming. Mitchell received calls from all over Victoria, from farmers sharing their own stories of emergency animal care, from veterinary students who wanted to know more about Lily's technique, from parents of young children who were inspired by the story to teach their kids about animal husbandry. But the call that mattered most came from Melbourne, from Mitchell's son, James, who he hadn't spoken to in nearly 8 months. "Dad," James's voice was tentative, uncertain, "I saw the article about you and the girl and Apollo. I had no idea that happened." "It was a close call," Mitchell said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We almost lost him. But you didn't, because you had help, because you let someone help you." The unspoken words hung between them. Mitchell had always been too proud, too stubborn to ask for help. After Sarah passed, after James moved to the city, Mitchell had isolated himself, convinced he could manage alone, that he didn't need anyone. "I'm sorry I haven't called," James said. "I'm sorry I let so much time pass. I'm sorry too, mate. I should have reached out, should have been a better father." There was silence on the line, and Mitchell could hear his son breathing, could almost feel the emotions swirling between them across the phone connection. "Can I come visit?" James asked. "Next weekend, maybe. I'd like to meet Apollo and Lily and just see you." "I'd like that," Mitchell said, and he meant it with his whole heart. When James arrived the following Saturday, Mitchell barely recognized him. His son had grown into a man, taller than Mitchell remembered, broader in the shoulders, with the beginning of grey in his beard that made him look distinguished rather than old. But what struck Mitchell most was the way James's face lit up when he saw Apollo, the genuine wonder in his eyes as he approached the massive bull. Dad, he's magnificent. He is now, Mitchell said. You should have seen him 3 weeks ago. Lily arrived shortly after, and Mitchell watched as his son and this remarkable girl struck up an easy conversation. James asked intelligent questions about the procedure, about bovine anatomy, about Lily's plans for the future, and Lily answered with her characteristic confidence, but also with a warmth that suggested she'd grown comfortable here, on this farm, with these people who'd become unexpectedly important to her. That afternoon, the four of them, Mitchell, James, Lily, and Tom, sat together in Mitchell's kitchen, eating a simple lunch of sandwiches and drinking tea. It was the first time Mitchell's kitchen had been full of people in years, and he felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been closed off for too long. "Lily's been talking about becoming a vet," Tom said, watching his daughter with obvious pride, following in her mother's footsteps. "You'd be brilliant," James said to Lily. "Absolutely brilliant." "I want to specialize in large animals," Lily said, "like Mum did. I want to help farmers like Mr. Harper, because most of them can't afford emergency vet calls. Most of them are out there alone, trying to save their animals without help. I want to change that." The passion in her voice, the absolute certainty of her purpose, reminded Mitchell so much of his own certainty at that age. Before life had complicated things, before loss had made him cautious and isolated, Lily still had that pure, uncomplicated drive to make a difference. "I think that's wonderful," James said, "and I'd like to help, if I can." "Help how?" Tom asked. "I work in finance in Melbourne," James explained. "We have programs for rural youth scholarships, education funding for students who want to pursue careers that benefit regional communities. If Lily's serious about becoming a vet, I could help navigate the scholarship applications, maybe even find sponsors." Mitchell saw the surprise and gratitude on Tom's face, saw the excitement light up in Lily's eyes, and felt proud of his son in a way he hadn't felt in years. "That would be amazing," Tom said quietly. "Sarah had life insurance, but most of it went to medical bills. University fees for vet school are going to be tough." "Then we'll make it happen," James said firmly. "We'll make sure Lily gets the education she deserves." As the afternoon wore on, Mitchell found himself standing in the barn with Apollo, watching as Lily showed James the exact spot where they'd performed the trocar procedure, explaining the anatomy with the precision of someone who'd studied it obsessively. Tom came to stand beside Mitchell, and the two men watched their children together in comfortable silence. "She's healing," Tom said quietly. "I didn't think she would. After Sarah died, Lily just shut down, wouldn't talk, wouldn't cry, wouldn't engage with anything. But this, helping Apollo, being here with you, it's brought her back to life." "She's brought me back to life too," Mitchell admitted. "I didn't realize how isolated I'd become until she showed up that morning, asking if she could help." "It's funny," Tom said. "We move out here to escape grief, to find peace. And instead we found purpose, connection, hope." Mitchell nodded, unable to speak around the lump in his throat. 6 months after Apollo's near-death experience, Mitchell stood in the Gippsland Agricultural Show, watching as his bull was paraded around the ring. Apollo had not only survived, he'd thrived, his coat gleaming white in the afternoon sun, his massive frame moving with power and grace. The judges were conferring, but Mitchell already knew what they'd decided. Apollo was in champion condition. Beside him stood Lily, now 12 years old, wearing a blue ribbon on her shirt that identified her as a junior agricultural volunteer. She'd been helping Mitchell prepare Apollo for the show all week, and her expertise with the bull had impressed everyone who'd witnessed it. "He's going to win," Lily said with quiet confidence. "Look at his muscle tone, his coat. Everything's perfect." "That's because of you," Mitchell said. "You saved his life, and you've helped me care for him ever since." The announcement came moments later. Grand Champion Bull. Apollo, owner, Mitchell Harper. The crowd applauded as Mitchell led Apollo to accept the championship sash, and he insisted that Lily stand beside him for the photographs. This moment belonged to both of them, to the farmer who'd refused to give up and the girl who'd known exactly what to do. But what Mitchell didn't know, what nobody in that ring could have predicted, was how profoundly that moment would change things. A woman in the crowd, someone Mitchell had never met, took a photo on her mobile and shared it on social media with a caption about the girl who'd saved the champion bull. The post went viral, shared thousands of times across farming communities and beyond. Within days, Mitchell was fielding calls from media outlets across Australia. Television programs wanted to interview Lily. Agricultural organizations wanted her to speak at youth conferences. A major veterinary school reached out to offer her a provisional scholarship, contingent on her maintaining strong grades through secondary school. Tom was overwhelmed by the attention, worried about protecting his daughter from exploitation, concerned that the publicity might harm rather than help her. But Mitchell, who'd watched Lily grow in confidence over the past months, saw something different. He saw an opportunity. "She's got knowledge that could help people," he told Tom one evening as they sat on Mitchell's veranda, watching the sun set over the paddocks. Real, practical knowledge about animal care, knowledge her mum gave her. Maybe it's meant to be shared. After careful consideration, Tom agreed to let Lily do one television interview, a feature on a regional farming program. Mitchell sat beside her during the filming, providing support but letting her tell the story in her own words. Lily spoke about her mother with love and pride, about watching Sarah work and learning everything she could. She explained the procedure she'd performed on Apollo with clinical precision, but also with compassion, making it clear that the goal was always to minimize suffering, to give animals the best chance at survival. "My mum taught me that every life has value," Lily said to the camera, her young face serious and thoughtful. "Whether it's $1 million bull or a sick calf nobody wants, they all deserve someone who'll fight for them. That's what being a vet means. That's what I want to do with my life." The interview aired on a Wednesday evening, and by Thursday morning, Mitchell's phone was ringing off the hook. But this time, the calls were different. They were from farmers asking for advice, from rural families wanting to know if Lily could teach their children basic animal care, from community organizations wondering if she'd be willing to run workshops. That's when Mitchell had an idea that felt so right, so obvious in retrospect, that he wondered why he hadn't thought of it sooner. He approached Tom with a proposal. Use a section of Mitchell's property to create a rural youth education center, a place where young people could learn practical animal husbandry skills, emergency care procedures, farm management. Lily could be the junior educator, sharing her knowledge with others her age. They could bring in retired vets, experienced farmers, create a program that genuinely helped prepare the next generation. Tom was skeptical at first. The logistics seemed overwhelming. The costs would be substantial. But James, who'd become increasingly involved in both their lives since that first visit, saw the potential. He helped them draft a proposal, identified potential funding sources, reached out to his professional network for support. Within 3 months, the Gippsland Rural Youth Education Initiative was born. It started small, just a dozen students meeting on Saturday mornings at Mitchell's property, learning from Lily about basic animal care, from Mitchell about farm management, from Tom about the business side of agriculture. But word spread quickly. The program grew. By the end of the first year, they had 50 regular students, ranging from 8 to 18 years old. They'd brought in 3 retired veterinarians as volunteer instructors, 2 agricultural scientists, and a rotating cast of working farmers who shared their expertise. Apollo became the program's mascot, his story of survival and recovery inspiring countless young people to see the value in agricultural careers. Lily continued to work with him, now teaching others the same careful observation skills her mother had taught her. The most profound change, though, was in the people themselves. Mitchell, who'd been isolated and grieving, now had purpose. His farm had become a gathering place, his kitchen often full of people sharing meals and stories. James visited every other weekend, helping with the program and rebuilding the relationship with his father that had nearly been lost. Tom, who'd moved to the country to escape painful memories, had instead found a new community. He'd started dating a woman who worked at the local agricultural supply store, someone who understood the farming life and appreciated the program he was helping to build. And Lily, who'd been drowning in grief 6 months ago, was thriving. She'd found a way to honor her mother's memory by sharing Sarah's knowledge with others. She'd discovered that healing wasn't about forgetting or moving on, but about taking the love and lessons from the person you'd lost and using them to make the world better. One evening, nearly a year after Apollo's rescue, Mitchell found Lily sitting alone in the barn, her mother's notebook open in her lap. He sat down beside her quietly, not wanting to intrude. "I was reading Mum's notes about her first solo emergency call," Lily said, her voice soft. She was terrified. "Wrote about how her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the instruments, but she did it anyway because the animal needed her." "Sounds familiar," Mitchell said with a gentle smile. "When I came here that morning, when I saw Apollo dying, I was so scared. I kept thinking, what if I remember wrong? What if I hurt him? What if I fail? But then I remembered what Mum always said, that fear is just your body getting ready to do something hard. That courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. Your Mum was a wise woman. She was, and I miss her every day. But Mr. Harper, I don't feel like I lost her anymore, because everything she taught me, everything she believed in, it's still here. It's in me. And now it's in all these other kids who are learning from us. She's still making a difference, even though she's gone." Mitchell felt tears prick his eyes. He thought about Sarah Richards, a woman he'd never met, but whose impact rippled through everything happening on his farm. He thought about how one act of courage, one moment of a girl refusing to walk away from something that needed help, had created this expanding circle of hope and healing. "Do you know what I think?" Mitchell said quietly. "I think you and your Mum saved more than just Apollo that morning. I think you saved me too, saved Tom, brought James back into my life, created something that's helping dozens of kids find their purpose. All because you asked a simple question, 'Can I help?'" Lily was quiet for a moment, and when she looked up at Mitchell, her eyes were bright with tears, but also with something else: pride, joy, understanding. "Mum used to say that the most important question any person can ask is not, 'What do I want?' or 'What will I get?' but 'How can I help?' She said that question, honestly asked and honestly answered, could change the world." "She was right," Mitchell said. "You proved it." They sat together in the comfortable silence of the barn, Apollo resting peacefully in his stall, the evening light filtering through the high windows and painting everything in shades of gold. Outside, they could hear voices, students arriving for an evening workshop, cars pulling up the drive, the sounds of community and connection and life. Mitchell thought about the desperate farmer he'd been that morning, kneeling beside his dying bull, convinced he was about to lose everything that mattered. He thought about the lonely man he'd become after his wife's death, isolated and convinced he didn't need anyone. And he thought about the unexpected angel who'd appeared in his doorway, a grieving girl with her mother's medical knowledge and the courage to use it, asking the simplest and most profound question imaginable: "Can I help?" That question had changed everything, had saved Apollo's life, yes. But more than that, it had saved Mitchell's life, had brought healing to Tom and Lily, had reconnected fathers and sons, had created a community where none existed before. As the students began filing into the barn for the evening session, Lily stood up, carefully closing her mother's notebook, and smiled at Mitchell with a warmth that had been absent that first morning, but had grown steadily over the months. "Ready to teach them about proper wound care?" she asked. "Ready," Mitchell confirmed. And together, the farmer and the girl who'd saved his bull walked out to meet the next generation, to share the knowledge and compassion that had transformed both their lives, to prove that the simplest acts of help could create miracles nobody foresaw. Behind them, Apollo raised his massive head and watched them go. The champion bull who'd been hours from death and now stood as living proof that courage, knowledge, and the willingness to ask, "Can I help?" could change everything. The outcome nobody had foreseen wasn't just Apollo's survival. It was the ripple effect of compassion, the way one act of helping had expanded outward to touch dozens of lives, to create community where there'd been isolation, to bring hope where there'd been only grief. And it had all started with a desperate farmer and a young girl who refused to walk past something that needed her help.